Let's talk about Bloodborne. Bloodborne was the hit new IP released by From Software back in 2015, and even though it's been nearly 3 years since its release, it's still alive and kicking. With an active subreddit and YouTube presence, Bloodborne seems to be refusing to let any time-induced entropy into its system. This should come as no surprise though. From Software has a wonderful habit of doing this sort of thing. Look at the Souls series, a series that started nearly 7 years ago. 9 years if you're including Demon Souls into the mix, still has a passionate following on the web. Why? It comes down to two main factors, gameplay and story. In this video, we're going to tackle the story of Bloodborne, specifically its principal influencer, H.P. Lovecraft. But before we get into Lovecraft, however, we should first cover a bit of the premise of Bloodborne for the uninitiated who might be watching. Bloodborne's story is simple, only on the surface level. You wake up in a dingy room after being given a blood transfusion by a stranger and are left with a vague note telling you to seek pale blood. After reading this note and promptly getting the snot kicked out of you by a werewolf, you awaken in a picturesque scene and are told that you are a hunter. You are here to hunt the beasts that roam the streets. You are supplemented by the hunter's dream, an odd state of existence that allows you to revive after you die, allowing you to continue your hunt regardless of normal mortality. This journey leads you to hunting many fearsome beasts, from a man who lost his way and succumbed to beasthood, to a living great one left behind in Yharnam. With that out of the way, let's get back to Lovecraft. Lovecraft is a bizarre literary figure to say the least. Born in 1890, Howard Phillips Lovecraft attempted to get into writing at a relatively young age, first gaining interest around 7. He went on to write for pulp magazines, as well as publish a few short stories in his life. However, he never really caught on during his short lifetime, dying in poverty at the age of 47. However, there was a specific quirk in his writings that allowed him to gain posthumous fame in a manner radically different from many other celebrated American authors. Lovecraft would oftentimes allow other writers to add to his universe. Dealing mainly in horror, he and his pen pals would conjure up some pretty terrifying monsters, complete with grotesque tentacles and all. This is probably the most obvious Lovecraft tie for Bloodborne. I mean, just take a look at Abridus. However, the similarities don't stop there. Lovecraft dealt heavily in the idea of forbidden knowledge and its effect on humans. In many of his stories, people are driven completely insane because they witnessed an eldritch horror, or read too deeply into them. This sentiment is mirrored in Bloodborne. A small way this forbidden knowledge is depicted in the game is through insight, a currency earned by seeing things that could break the psyche of weaker minds, usually tied to bosses and items called Madman's Knowledge. Once you collect enough of these insight points, your character will be exposed to more of the world that is usually hidden away. Aside from insight, there's Yharnam itself. Underneath Yharnam, the city in which the game takes place, catacombs were found. Within these catacombs was a discovery, that of the blood of the Great Ones, an easy analog to Lovecraft's own eldritch deities. This blood was a miracle substance, healing any maladies that one may have with a simple infusion. The elixir didn't come without its own set of hazards, though. Soon after the blood became a common staple in Yharnam, a mysterious plague swept across the land. The disease in question turned those who used said blood into beasts, slowly eating away at their humanity until they were something entirely inhuman. This transformation can be seen as an easy mirror of Lovecraft's work, the tempered transformation of a mortal into something much less, or in some cases, more, is common in both canons. However, even this staple of the game isn't enough to warrant its entire video. There has to be more. That there is. Another influence of Lovecraft was that of nihilism. This shines through in many of his overarching philosophies. When dealing with nihilism, and more specifically cosmic nihilism, Lovecraft's favorite flavor, one deals with a sense of smallness when put on a cosmic scale. I mean, the entirety of the Lovecraft canon takes place in a reality that only exists in the mind of a slumbering eldritch horror. How is this mirrored in Bloodborne? Well, to answer that question, we have to enter spoiler territory, so if you have any desire of playing through this game on your own, I'd advise you to do that before you complete this video, as we'll be covering the endings of the game. I'll see you in roughly 60 to 80 hours. Now, the endings of Bloodborne can be pretty confusing. They stick pretty closely to FromSoft's ideas on narrative, never truly laying out all the answers for you from the get-go. There are 3 endings in total. One involves you coming back to the hunter's dream caught ablaze. There you meet Gehrman, a kind if not eccentric old hunter that has tended to the dream for an untold amount of time. He has been with you since the beginning, giving you the advice you might need at certain points, as well as offering the use of his workshop. In this moment, he offers you the option of escaping this wretched cycle of the hunter's dream to awaken anew, one final time, free from the burden of the hunt. He does this by brandishing a scythe, his signature weapon, and beheading you, severing your connection to the dream entirely. This is followed by a scene of your character waking up in the streets of Yharnam with the unfamiliar sight of the sun to greet you. The night of horrors and the hunt have been brought to an end. If you decline, however, a different story unfolds. I'll let the cutscene speak for itself.
Good hunter, you've done well. The night is near its end. Now, I will show you mercy. You will die, forget the dream, and awake under the morning sun. You will be freed from this terrible hunter's dream. Dear, oh dear, what was it? The hunt, the blood, or the horrible dream? Oh, it doesn't matter. It always comes down to the hunter's helper to clean up after these sorts of messes. Tonight, Gehrman joins the hunt.
He believes you to be misguided. After countless deaths and rebirths, he believes that you have lost sight of reality and proceeds to attempt a mercy killing. After you beat Gehrman, the first hunter, you are visited by a powerful Great One called the Moon Presence and are given the task of tending the hunter's dream yourself. You are the new Gehrman, fated to act as a guide for all hunters who come after you until you meet the same fate he did. However, there is a third option. If you have consumed 3 umbilical cords by the time you face this Great One, you push back. Your fate is in your own hands as you slay the Moon Presence in one final act of rebellion. After this, you are reborn a final time as an infant Great One. You ascend the upper echelon of existence as a small, slimy slug. If these endings don't sit right with you, that's because they shouldn't. There's no good end to Bloodborne. In one ending, you awaken anew after the hunt ends. However, when the hunt starts again, you no longer have the connection of the hunter's dream to rely on. You're nothing special anymore, so you will be destined to lock yourself away in your shack of a home, hiding from the beasts that roam the streets until you succumb to the beasts themselves or the plague of beasthood. In the second ending, your accomplishments are met with naught. All the beasts you've slain mean nothing in the long run, for there will always be more. Your existence as a tender of the hunter's dream signifies that. Your purpose is to groom the next set of hunters so they can take on the same futile mission you did. You merely contributed to a small amount of the endless cycle. Even in the final ending, wherein you ascend the evolutionary ladder and become a Great One yourself, you are left pathetic and small, a defenseless slug stripped of its humanity that you had to struggle the entire game to maintain. In this ending, you do not ascertain any sort of victory, for the human you dies. Great Ones in the lore don't retain much humanity at all, save a few key examples. You will follow this path. There's no concrete way of knowing whether or not the black slug you become even recalls its prior humanity. You didn't win in this ending. You merely stepped out of the picture. What does any of this have to do with Lovecraft anyway? Well, this is actually the strongest connection of Lovecraft to Bloodborne, in my opinion. Here we find 3 victory conditions. None of them will change anything for Yharnam. The cycle will continue. The beasts will continue to kill, the hunters will continue to hunt, and the great ones will continue to exist, standing by just outside of the grasp of many people's minds. Nothing you've accomplished over the course of this game will have a lasting impact on the larger scale. As a player, you are left with that knowledge, the insight that no matter how hard you struggled, how many times you died, or how many beasts you killed, will be remembered by time. The effect of your actions will fade away. You are not special. You are just another cog in a machine that you barely understood. If that isn't Lovecraftian, then I don't know what is. Thanks for watching.